Good evening, everyone. Today is October 17th, 2016, and welcome back to another edition of Veterans Voices, our monthly talk show focusing on veterans issues. I'm Nathan Johnson, the Contra Costa County Veteran Service Officer. Joining me this evening is Kevin Graves. Wait, Kevin? Oh, Shauna Springer. Sorry about that, everyone. Shauna is back on the show. You remember her last episode. She was on and discussing with us suicide prevention. Well, I'm pleased to have Shauna back this month, and not as a guest, but as a co-host. So tonight we're going to talk about substance abuse in the veteran community. And we'll offer tools, resources to identify when someone needs help and how to find them that help. We have a whole panel of experts here tonight, and we will all work together to shed light on the topic of addiction. If you're watching and you're in crisis, we hope you're watching. We hope you're not in crisis. But if you are, or if you know someone who is, you should call the VA's Veteran Crisis Hotline now. The number's on your screen, and we'll be running this number throughout tonight's show. If you have questions or you would like to share your thoughts, reach out to us by phone, email, or anonymous chat. You can send us a message through social media even. We're watching, we're paying attention. We welcome your input into tonight's topic. This is an open discussion, and we'll be taking your calls for the next hour. We'd now like to welcome our Marine Corps veteran, Ed, and his wife, Kathy, and psychologist Dr. Tara Nevins to the set. Welcome, folks. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And so tell us a little bit about yourself. Ed, I mentioned you as a Marine Corps veteran, but tell us real briefly just a little bit about your service.
My service was as a Marine Corps officer and leading an engineering platoon, and served in Vietnam. Unfortunately, got wounded there and spent some time in the hospital before being medically retired.
Well, thank you for being here tonight. And Kathy, you had said earlier in our discussions, you've almost been married to a Marine for 50 years. I don't know how that's possible, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm happy to be a mom and a grandma, and we have two daughters. They each have two daughters, so it's definitely a female household, and I've enjoyed supporting it and getting to help veterans, which I had never done until very recently. So that's been a new phase of my life.
Well, thank you for being here tonight. It's always great to have the perspective of the spouse, the family member. Although the show's often about veterans issues, I don't think that we can really have the discussion without the voice of the spouse. So thank you, Kathy, for being here. And Tara Nevins, you're from Sacramento.
Yeah, I work at the Sacramento VA Medical Center, and I'm the supervisory psychologist and addiction recovery treatment services team lead. But I'm in no way officially representing VA.
Right. You're just here as yourself tonight.
Just as a psychologist.
And we appreciate that so much, but you're bringing a expert's perspective to the discussion. It's hard to pick where we begin, really, but we've been talking about this topic for several months now, and realizing that, you know, we all really embrace and even joke around about the idea of substance use, and in the military it's even really common, but at some point it becomes a problem, and whether others consider it a problem or the veteran themselves considers it a problem. What is your experience in helping veterans? What do veterans really face when we talk about substance? Yeah,
substance use is just such a big problem. And one of the things I'm really excited about at the VA and at many nearby treatment facilities is that we have same-day access, so people can just come right in. Mm-hmm. We have a foundation and recovery program or something similar at every Northern California VA site. But it really affects families and couples and children. It's definitely a big issue, and there's a lot of hope for recovery.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the most common, I mean, Sean and I have been talking about, like, caffeine even is a big problem in the military. We depend on it to get us, you know, onto the next mission and get us through that mission. But are some of the most common alcohol or tobacco, or are there some more exotic type substance
Yeah.
problems out there today?
Yeah, definitely alcohol is the most common, and nicotine, caffeine. It's really hard to do a mission if you don't have enough energy. So many people start turning to caffeine and maybe meth in this area. Heroin is more popular on the East Coast.
I've been hearing about that.
But marijuana as well. And then oftentimes it's an issue about sleep. And so people start doing something, then they realize they can't sleep well. They may have post-traumatic stress disorder. And so that really complicates the picture.
And the theme of tonight's show is know thy enemy, right? So it's about knowing when substance, whether it's something hardcore, that I consider hardcore, something like heroin or meth, or something maybe a little bit more softer like caffeine or tobacco. But when do we really figure this thing out? When do we know that these things that we consume on a day-to-day basis, and we even kind of endorse it and encourage each other to do it, oh, I can't think right because I haven't had my coffee this morning. When do we know? You're a family member, Kathy. We were talking earlier, it got to the point where you said, I've had enough, but what was it like on a daily basis just to deal with or work through someone who was using a substance?
Well, I think for a long time I just denied it, and that's not unusual. And then I drank with him, so that's another thing. Like, oh, I'm drinking with him, so maybe he won't drink as much. And what happened eventually was I did not like myself. I did not like who I was when I was drinking, and I certainly had put up with a lot of verbal abuse and. Ed's acting out like self-hatred, being really angry with himself, and being angry with our children. And I just had it. And one day I just said, I've got to do something. And in the back of my mind, I heard my sister, who was married to an alcoholic and was in recovery, say, Al-Anon saved me. And that's what I did. I went to my first Al-Anon meeting, and I felt like I didn't feel shame. I felt acceptance. People knew what I was going through, and they weren't giving me advice, but they were giving me resources and direction. And it changed everything for me, that first meeting. And then getting a sponsor and working the steps.
What about for you, Ed? When did you begin to see alcohol as more of an enemy than a help?
Well, when I was drinking, I just thought, I was very popular and I was funny, and everybody even told me, I like you when you're drinking. Yeah. But and Kathy would complain about the way I treated her, and I said, "Oh, you're crazy. I mean, things are going good here. I'm making good money, and kids are right on the right path." But I didn't realize I had my the best thing I did is Kathy asked me to go to see a counselor, and after quite a while I said I would do that. And one night he asked Kathy how she felt when I was drinking, how I treated her, and she got this horrible expression on her face and burst into tears. And I haven't had a drink since that night. So the key was that I finally realized the pain that I was causing.
It really broke through to you in that moment.
That's right. It was a transformative moment in my life. And I knew, in the back of my mind, I knew I got too good a prize there. I can't afford to lose Kathy. So.
How did you come
it's
together?
Selfish, but I mean.
Yeah, no, it's motivated by love.
Yeah.
How did you come together as a team to confront this issue?
Well, I drank a lot of Diet Coke for about 6-8 months, maybe. I weaned myself off that, and I was kind of sullen and quiet, but I'm sure Kathy would agree that was better than when I was drinking. And I just knew it was wrong. It wasn't for me anymore. It couldn't happen, and that's it. I feel very blessed that happened to me, because if it wasn't for Kathy, I would have just been, I'd be dead now.
I heard a couple things there. I just want to point out, and I want to invite everyone who's watching this show tonight to participate in the discussion as well. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Ed and Kathy, as well. And we know that you've got a story. We all have stories. We all have a little bit of us that we want to share in regards to our reliance and our abuse and dependency on substances. And we're not pointing the fingers here tonight. We're just trying to have an open, honest discussion. One of the things that you just mentioned is you talk about how people said, you know, Ed, I like you better when you drink. And it's such a social lubricant, right? It's such, when we have friends over, we're offering them a glass of wine or a beer, or you were in the construction industry. You mentioned that earlier. It may even be a part of the component of the industry that you're involved in to drink, right? Work hard, party hard kind of thing. What were they meaning when they liked you better when you drink, Ed? What was the sense of, were you...
I used a lot of sarcasm as humor, which I later thought was, not honorable to do. But they just liked, they just liked I was lighthearted and funny, very shallow, but, And in fact, I probably didn't make a heck of a lot of real friends that I still have today until after I quit drinking.
I think one thing your story really highlights, too, is, as you said, at first it was a social experience and to relax and to unwind, and then at some point, we might call it hitting rock bottom or just having too many consequences, and it may have just become a necessity almost to drink. I don't know if you had shakes and things, but people get physical dependence. And when people are getting clean and sober or being off the substances, it's so important to have that family support and friends. Many of the clients that I see really struggle with, how do I play softball without drinking? Where do I go? Who do I meet? And that's where something like a 12-step program can really get you much more connected.
Tara, we have about 5 minutes, and we want to again invite you to join in the discussion tonight. And I want to remind folks, you can do so anonymously. You can send us a chat, you can send us an email. We won't mention your name, nothing about your personal history, but you have an opportunity to ask a question, leave some comments without revealing yourself if you prefer to do so anonymously. I want to come back because you talk about the physical dependence, and I'm not sure what kind of to what extent research is done on that, or what kind of understanding do we really have? And Ed, maybe you can describe it too, but what physically happens when the body needs something like a substance? I know the after effects of not having it or shaking, but what is it that our body's actually doing when it's saying, give me more of that caffeine, give me more of that nicotine, give me more of that alcohol, that meth, give me that high? What's happening there?
Well, the reward system is changing in the brain, and so it actually needs the alcohol. The neurotransmitters, your brain is changed by alcohol. And so that's where people often need to do detox, usually 5 days from alcohol, and then pain medication, opiates, heroin, usually about 10 days. So it's a very real thing. So
is your brain actually reprogramming it, rewiring itself?
It is.
It's actually making decisions based on either being under the influence or not being under the influence. Are people able to think more clear when they're under the influence? Or are they actually do they make less? Why is this? What happens there? If it's reprogramming itself, what is it trying to accomplish?
Sure. Well, certainly with alcohol, people are generally more impulsive. They're more likely to engage in risky behavior. They're misinterpreting social cues many times, and that's where we might have physical assault or kind of intimate partner violence or sexual assault and things.
Can you relate to that at all? I'm sorry.
I was always too drunk to notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never had any physical impairment that I was aware of, anyway.
But what I heard you say is that you were getting reinforced for being funny, in the moment. But these weren't real friendships that you were developing. That they were really not anything you could depend on, and that the real friendships and the deeper friendships maybe were developed after you.
That's correct. Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about that. What changed after
you become more yourself when you're somebody else when you're drinking or using any kind of drug. So I learned that the real me was likable, and other people liked me without alcohol, and people who were really you could count on as a friend.
Right. And you find out who has your back, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we often talk about, is this someone you could call at 3 in the morning? And often when you're just talking about your drinking buddies, no, that's not someone you could call. That's not someone that could bail you out. In addition to the 12-step programming, there's also cognitive behavioral work and motivational interviewing. And all 3 kinds of therapies have been shown to be equally effective on Project Match 97. And it sounds like you more did the 12-step programming with a sponsor that can be extremely powerful.
I just want to say one thing. I didn't go to AA or any other program, but I have gone to meetings since subsequently, and I absolutely endorse AA. I mean, it works.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. We're going to go away for a break real briefly. We've got a couple more segments. We've got plenty more time to talk about substance abuse. And again, we want to learn how to know thy enemy. We want to understand when we ourselves are struggling with an addiction or with an abuse of a substance, whether that be something that you may think is irrelevant to the discussion, but even something as light as caffeine, tobacco, if you consider that light, or maybe something as heavy as alcohol, meth, or bath salts, some really exotic things out there today. So we'll now take a quick break for a public service announcement brought to you by the United States Marine Corps as part of their Protect What You've Earned campaign. You'll really enjoy this. I think it's phenomenal. And we'll still be taking your calls and messages throughout the break. We'll be right back.
Marines, this is just the start of the conversation.
The first email I get every day is all the things that happen to Marines around the Marine Corps and around the world that were bad. Sexual assault, suicidal ideation, suicide attempt, car accidents. We just lose too many people. But I think we have to have a conversation about how much we drank. Because all this other stuff continues on, and quite frankly, after 40 years, I'm tired. I'm tired of it. I can't do it myself. And this isn't about me, it's about you. So what are you going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Because it has to come from the bottom. It can't come from the top down, because top down hadn't worked. I mean, think about it. Think about how you felt that day you got that EGA in your hand, or they pinned that gold bar on your collar. Think about that. Is that really worth drinking too much? You got to do better, Marines, sailors, civilians. And we have to help each other. And this applies to everybody, from the private to a general. Everybody in here is important, not just to ourselves, to the institution, to your families, but to the nation. Being killed in combat, that's one thing. These other ways, it's just not supposed to be that way. Not like this.
So welcome back to Veterans Voices. We hope you enjoyed that. We even talked about the public service announcement ourselves. That was called Protect What You've Earned, and it was the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Neller, I think his name is. And you can find that on YouTube. It's a bit difficult to find, but it's on there. Look it under, I think it's Marine Corps Reserves. Commandant General Neller, Protect What You've Earned. Tonight our show is called Substance Abuse, Know Thy Enemy. And we're here tonight openly, all of us, to discuss the issue of addiction and abuse, and to offer resources and to take your questions. And it was mentioned while we were at the break by one of our cameramen, Bruce, that we're leading into the holidays. We're leading into a time in which people struggle the most, maybe, with substance abuse, because maybe it's a part of the holiday season. So. But we were also going to come back to your comment, Ed, at the end, in which you were starting to shed light a little bit on what really helped you through fighting your addiction to alcohol. And you had said that meetings really helped you. But when I asked you earlier, you had mentioned that it really was your wife, Kathy, that helped you the most.
Yeah, she didn't leave me, which is was a big thing that I feared. Once I realized the pain I was causing, and I think just it was never held over my head or used as a club She was always positive and grateful of what I was going through and what I was doing. So.
I wonder if in any ways working on this together has actually changed your relationship or affected your trust.
Absolutely.
Can you say more about that?
I'm just so I can't tell you how grateful I am that she called me on the mat and made me do what I did. And it just made her, she was always my best friend. Now she's my best friend.
That's beautiful. What about for you, Kathy?
When I think about, you know, we were just with our grandchildren, for example, over the weekend in Seattle, and they asked why we were going to come on television. And so Ed said, well, you know, kind of skirted it and said, well, I'm going to be talking to help veterans, and, you know, I had some problems when I was younger, and I don't even think we said alcohol. And these children have no idea that their grandfather was an alcoholic. And either do our two older grandchildren know that, because he's been sober this whole time. And so when they hear you know, when I think back about how our daughters struggled and how our relationship was, my relationship with Ed was so tense because I was trying to support our daughters and still stay in the marriage. And we came together, and a lot of it had to do with friends who were Christians and invited us to a church where there was quite a few people in recovery. And we felt at home there, and we could be in social situations where people weren't going to be pushing alcohol on us. Some family members continued to do that. And I think one of the things I took a real firm stand was, Ed said, well, you know, we have these people and they are longtime friends and we should still be serving alcohol. And I said, I will not purchase another bottle of alcohol as long as I live.
Taking a stand.
Yeah.
Cold turkey.
Yep.
Quitting it. I want to come back to that in a second. We have a question here, and it's really addressed to you, Dr. Springer. Dr. Springer mentioned others start liking those affected by addiction more. Ever considered that some uses because they don't like themselves or the pain becomes too much? So, so if I'm understanding this question, so we were talking about...
To clarify, I don't think that others that you value deeply like you more. There's a distinction I hope to make about that.
Yeah.
It's that you get social approval,
yeah, right.
you know, in these kind of shallow ways that we were talking about. But I think the question is a very good one, and is one that we should throw out there. Ever considered some use because they don't like themselves or because the pain becomes too much? So the question is about use of substances, I think, to escape painful emotions. And I think that's a really good question. What do you all think about that?
I think we see a huge link between depression and alcohol. And what's really kind of ironic is that alcohol is a depressant. So people turn to it because of depression, but then they become more depressed. And there are wonderful talk therapies, antidepressants to work through depression instead. We also see a lot of people with post-traumatic stress disorder that turn to alcohol to deal with avoidance issues and being too aroused to stimuli and having nightmares. And so again, medication, talk therapy can be obviously much more helpful than getting an addiction issue.
You know, I wonder how many people really get a sense or an understanding of what types of substances result in what type of outcome, right? Like caffeine is an upper and alcohol is a downer. I mean, maybe it's obvious to more people, but for me it's kind of like, aha, that's right. And so it's interesting when we mix alcohol with caffeine. We put, you know, vodka and Red Bull together. So you're talking about someone who's depressed and they're kind of upping themselves and downing themselves at the same time. It's really this, it can almost send off maybe this just mix of emotions, right? Maybe they are depressed, but then maybe they're a little bit too anxious, a little bit too hypervigilant as a result of this this caffeine, this rush that comes from that. What about not liking yourself? What about just a genuine dislike? Not a diagnosis, but like, you know, the moral injury, right? Like not. I don't like myself because of who I've become or what I've done, or just lack of self-esteem.
Yeah, I think alcohol is really used as an avoidance strategy because people are not able to or cannot or for whatever reason deal with the real issues. And so it's so important to get at those issues in a therapeutic environment where you feel safe, or in a 12-step meeting where there's confidentiality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank Anand for the question. I invite others to send in questions, either anonymously or you can identify yourself. You can even call in. We'd love to hear from you. You have a voice. We want to hear it tonight. I want to go back to where you're leading off, Kathy, and you were mentioning that you were just kind of holding it together for your family and holding it together for your kids. How are your children affected by this? Because they must have been pretty young at the time. Were they able to express at all what their experience was like?
They've expressed it as adults, and how they've done it is they've forgiven us. So we've made amends to them, and we were fortunate enough that they both have forgiven us, because that doesn't necessarily happen. But they were, I mean, their relationships with their friends, where their friends became their confidants, and some friends they felt they could talk about what was going on in the house, and others they couldn't, and they stopped having friends come over. Other things, we were not included in things anymore with them, you know, other than sports, because I think they felt they didn't know what was going to happen. They lived in fear that Ed would say or do something inappropriate, or that I'd become angry, which was equally disturbing to them. And so there was all this walking around on eggs, and also not wanting to get Ed upset, because when he became upset, he drank more, and then he would be cursing or throwing things. Like if he was in the garage, he'd throw a hammer. And the kids remember that. And even in driving, you know, like pulling over at the side of the road, and we're just saying, please stop, you know, let mom drive, and he wouldn't do that. And so those kinds of incidences.
So you're giving some really powerful examples of how an addiction can really hijack the entire family. You know, that it really is about the whole family system and everybody that's, you know, affected. And I love that you have also worked at this together and kind of repaired those bonds with your children, you know, in this process. What are your thoughts on anything Kathy shared or anything else?
It's the truth, the whole truth. So, no, to this day, I often, not often, I shouldn't say it. I occasionally look back on my life, and I'm very disheartened and disappointed in myself. Not to the point that I'm going to fall out of recovery or anything, but I mean, I'm just not proud of that stretch of my life.
What are you proud of now about Ed's recovery?
Oh, that he's recovered, and he's a great father now and grandfather, and he's made efforts to be closer to his daughters, and that we can go, you know, like on family occasions, and, you know, there's not that stress, there's not that anxiety, that we are together and we're happy, and our kids are happy and grateful for the recovery. And you know, I think our girls at this point don't even think about that anymore, which also is another layer of forgiveness. You know, so I think we're blessed.
When the sting is gone, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When the sting is gone. Tara and I were talking before the show about what a blessing it is that you're sharing your story, because it's never too late. Did you have some?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I see someone who's coming in for detox, I don't care if it's their first detox or their 20th or 30th or whatever it is, I always say, this can be your last one. And I really believe that. It's about hope and working through it. And I think some things you highlighted, the secrecy thing. So we know in families where there's alcohol and drug use, there's a lot of secrecy. And so you broke through that, you're honest with each other, you're no longer scared of being in situations, it's more relaxed. And we also often see legal issues with addictions. And so when people are no longer using substances, they no longer need to worry about all that stuff. So it's just a much more relaxed environment.
Well, we'll have more time to discuss. We're going to break for just another brief moment, and love to come back to this discussion right where we lead off, and hope that more of our audience can participate in the discussion as well. Again, we have the option for you to call in tonight. You can chat, email. 313-1170 is our phone number. And tonight's our 27th episode, and we wouldn't have made it this far if it wasn't for you. So we need your participation. Another way to participate and to support the show is to be a part of the viewer advisory panel. And you can join the viewer advisory panel tonight. This is a group of viewers who provide this show with valuable feedback and opinions so we can make this show stronger and more valuable to you. To sign up for our panel, go to our website, contracostatv.org/Veterans Voices. It's an easy way you can support this show and help us determine what content is most important to you. We'll return right after this video.
There was an island in the Euphrates River. The intel was that there was enemy on this island and they were shooting mortars from this island. You know, you have your M16 slung, your magazines, you have your grenades, so you're swimming with a full combat load. That morning, my swimming partner was Corporal Jeffrey Green. We were probably maybe 15 feet from the island, and I told Corporal Green I was going to try to touch the bottom, and I couldn't touch, so we started swimming again. By the time I got from that 15 feet, you know, I swam that 15 feet where I tried to touch, I ended up getting to the island, and I turned around and Corporal Green was gone. I always wondered, why me? Why didn't I get hurt? Why didn't I get shot? Why didn't I get killed? You know, why did these guys have to die? And you know, they remind me to get up and, you know, make the most of my day.
Well, when he came home definitely changed.
He was home, but he brought the war back with him, I think. And I didn't see the day-to-day thing, but I know later on he told us there was 4 or 5 times where he was thinking about suicide. And the hardest part is that we all loved him so much and we couldn't help him.
I had a really hard time with the transition from military to a civilian life. I had a hard time sleeping. If I wasn't blacked out drunk, I would have bad dreams. And you know, that was my way of coping with the problem, was blacking out. So I drank to try to solve my problems. The New Year's of 2007, I ended up meeting this girl named Lara.
My name is Lara, and I've been dating Brandon for going on 8 years on New Year's.
This VA appointment had come up, and I was unsure on if I was going to go or not, but you know, all I needed was that one person to tell me, yes, do it. And I went.
I did encourage him to get help, but there's no way that I could tell him to get help and him actually do it and it be successful. It was something that had to come from within himself.
I ended up going to the Minneapolis VA. I was diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety disorder. They have plenty of awesome doctors and all these programs. I used the Montgomery GI Bill. I went to school in Eau Claire, Wisconsin at Chippewa Valley Technical College and got 2 associate degrees, one in business management and one in marketing.
I think the GI Bill allowed Brandon, it prepared him for his entrepreneurship. He started his own P-Dub Productions, and looks to me like he's off to a roaring start.
I graduated school and I started a production company, and I traveled the United States and Canada recording Native American music.
As an economist, I'd say we got a good return on our investment.
A lot of the recordings that we do are live, so we travel from state to state, from province to province, going to these different powwows, and we actually set up the microphones around the drum. The singers sing their songs, and you know, I have a pretty easy job. I just hit record. Anything that you might have going on, that's what the VA is for, and there are plenty of people there to help you.
So just, I think, ultimately supporting each other and loving each other come what may.
I couldn't ask for anything more right now. I'm really happy where I'm at right now.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. While we are gone, we had a caller, and we're going to take that call later on in the show. But in the meantime, phone lines are open, and we invite you to participate in our discussion tonight about substance abuse and addiction. If you have a story you'd like to share or a question for our panel, tonight's the moment. Trust me, this is an open discussion. There is no wrong question or comment. We want to talk about this not only on our set, but in your living room as well. Send us an anonymous chat if you prefer. Ed, I want to talk to you about Ed today. I've known you for quite a few years and have myself come to know personally all the wonderful things that you do in this community, not only for veterans, but for your church and for your neighborhood. So share a little bit with us. Who's Ed today that's not drinking in the garage and throwing tools and making everyone mad and fearful? Who is Ed today?
Well, I guess one of the first things that I did after I quit drinking was to get involved with the burn survivor community, because that was the nature of my wounds.
You were severely burned, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was I'm not so much active now, but I was very active for about 6 or 7 years, more than that, 10 or 12 years. I was on the board and whatnot, and I was a camp counselor for the little kids.
Wow. Tough.
Every year we go down to Fresno. It was a great place, Happy Valley.
Yeah.
So, I later started mentoring young Marines and some not so young Marines, and I did it one-on-one. And I've come to the realization that that's kind of my thing. I'm most effective rather than in a larger group.
And would you mentor them on issues like substance? Would that be a part of the mentorship?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I got in over my head, but I'm doing okay because one of the guys I'm presently mentoring is bipolar, and that's really a challenge.
Okay.
I was active in the Veterans Treatment Court in Alameda County, mentoring veterans that are accused of, or not just accused of, we did all felonies.
Yeah, it's a very important program where veterans, instead of being incarcerated, could actually get treatment for any service-related injuries, right?
Help get them jobs and whatnot. And I think the Contra Costa County has that court now too, don't they?
Working towards it.
You're still working?
Yeah, it's not the county, but the Superior Court of Contra Costa is hoping to fund a veterans treatment court, right? Yeah.
Well, it's a good program.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think if we're talking about the use of things like alcohol or marijuana, and we're talking about combat-related stress or, you know, some type of sexual trauma from the military, it can lead to incidents where people get in trouble for having it on them, right? If you have an amount of marijuana on you, you can now be, you know, fined for it, or you can go to jail for it. And instead, what the person needs is treatment, right? So it's a fantastic program. I'm so glad that you've been involved in that. So tell us more.
Well, one of when I was first injured, I was flown back to Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio. It's a burn, at that time, well, it probably still is a burn center of the world.
BAMC,
yeah. And I was on a ward with about 20 other patients. Only I was by far the mildest patient there, you know, of severity. And these men were just burned horribly, and they who were vocal about it, just, you know, screaming, whatnot. And I was, I told myself, well, you know, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be vocal like that. This, you know, I'm a Marine officer. I can't be seen doing that, which was the worst thing I could have done. But I think I have a mild PTSD, and I think that is the most, that experience, I was on that ward for about two or 3 weeks. That was the most heinous thing that I could imagine. That really had a profound effect on me.
Still today.
Still.
Yeah.
I think about it, it comes back in. I do have certain symptoms of PTSD, but I never remember any. You know, I wake up in violent fits and can't remember. Maybe that's a defense mechanism, I don't know.
So what's one healthy way that you, I don't want to say deal with that, but that you live with that? What's one healthy way that you live with that in which maybe in the past you were grabbing for a cold one?
Well, you recognize that you got a problem, and then you got to identify the problem. And to help you do that, I think it's good to be in a certain program. I mean, AA is the most common one, but there are other sources as well. But yeah, I would say, you know, recognizing what's wrong with you and then going after
getting the support.
That includes, you know, I had a built-in support system.
Yeah.
And that actually brings me to a question I had for you, Dr. Nevins, about the way that VA has been on the cutting edge of some of this work in terms of the substance abuse treatments and opioid.
Yeah, and let me just highlight a couple other things you said, Ed, too, because when you're using substances, it's like not just a full-time job, it's like an overtime job. And so what you've done so lovely is you've done all this volunteer experience and you've really structured your time. And the thing you said, too, you know, as a Marine, you didn't really want to ask for help. And so that can be really challenging. My grandfather was a Marine, so I know a little how that is. In terms of what was offered now, we have state-of-the-art programming. It's really a lot more treatment than we used to have. Opiate dependence is a huge problem, often linked to suicidality. We have opiate kits that people can take, and if you do take one of those, you have to still call 911, go to the emergency department. We have naltrexone and antabuse for alcohol, as well as a compressate. We have buprenorphine and methadone. Buprenorphine is a newer medication that has less diversion.
For all of us laymen, what is it that you just spit? Are these countermeasures?
Countermeasures, medications that can be useful as treatments for addiction issues.
So can it take someone out of their high and sober them up? Can it save their life? Or is it just to like knock them silly and make them so sick that they don't want to do it again?
Yeah, many different things. So antabuse does the latter, where you would get sick if you would have alcohol. A compressate and some other medications like naltrexone deal with cravings for alcohol. And then we have the opioid kits, which would be if you overdose.
Which would save a life.
Which would save a life.
Got it.
So it's pretty remarkable. And buprenorphine, methadone also.
It's a fantastic initiative.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much more to talk about this. An hour is not nearly enough time. I want to thank you, Kathy, for being on the show, sharing your perspective as a wife. Again, I don't know how you've been married to a Marine for 50 years, but congratulations on that. And I want to thank you so much for sharing not only who you are today, but who you've been in the past. And certainly we honor who you are today and who you've been in the past. A Vietnam veteran, significantly injured, per part recipient, severely burned. So thank you, Ed. Tara, I want to thank you as a psychologist for what you do on a daily basis for our veterans. And it sounds like the VA has a good foothold on how to help veterans when they reach out for help. And so I want to encourage you, our audience, if you know of someone or if you yourself are dealing with addiction or dealing with abuse, it doesn't matter if you put that rubber stamp on it. If you've got that question in your mind as to, do I have this under control? Do I really know my enemy? Reach out, whether it's to the VA or whether it's to Al-Anon or to the AA. Reach out to your neighbor, your best friend, and get some help. We need you. We need that continued service that you have provided for our country in the past. We're going to take a moment now to watch Angie's story. For more videos on veterans issues and addiction, go to youtube.com and type in Veterans Affairs. We'll still be taking your calls and messages throughout the break.
Honestly, the VA saved my life, and they care. I went to a small base in South Korea. It's one of the smallest. I was the third woman ever allowed on there, and I ended up getting raped really brutally. And my company commander brushed it under the rug, and I had to stay there and working with this guy, and nothing was done. But it didn't take long for all the suffering I had endured to cause me to want to drink to cover it up. And every time I try to push it down, it'd come out sideways. So I ended up becoming an alcoholic. And I ended up pulling myself out of it by moving and, you know, disengaging with those people. And then I was introduced to crack. So, well, if it wasn't for the VA, I wouldn't be alive. I wouldn't be where I am today, that's for sure. You know, eventually I started becoming more interested in what they had to offer, and you get those pamphlets or you look online and it'll tell you all about the benefits. I called them up, and a week later I was in patient treatment with everything I owned. You know, I had no job, no home, no nothing, and they took me in, and I was in for 45 days. You know, for 10 years I was struggling with it until finally in 2009 I went and got help. I've been sober since July 25, 2009. No drugs, no alcohol. And if I never would have known that a claim could be put in and then I suffered from PTSD, I never would have gotten where I am today. You know, I knew how to seek VA services and I did it. I didn't know exactly what they offered, but when you're there long enough, you start networking with other people, you start finding out different things, you get flyers. I was living in Richfield, Minnesota, and Valley Total Fitness was right down the street. And I started working out there. Well, I noticed they had a total martial arts program. So I joined it, and my husband was my instructor at the time. We recently got married September 7th, 2013, and went to Maui afterwards, and life's been a really good blessing.
Welcome back. We'd now like to turn our discussion to a special segment we call A Veteran's Voice. This is a spot in our show given to veterans in our community who have something to say about their experience or who just want to tell their story. If you'd like to be on our Veterans Voice segment, email or call our producers, and maybe you could be featured in the next episode. We'd now like to welcome United States Coast Guard veteran Jen Manor to the set. Welcome, Jen.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your service. Maybe pull out one peak experience for us that kind of...
Okay, I served in the United States Coast Guard, and my primary location was in Florida. A few stations. The one that really stands out would be Miami.
Okay.
So it was very exciting. Was rescue swimmer of the helicopters, and there's a lot of boardings, Haitians, Cubans, stuff like that. It was always busy.
Sounds like a high intensity.
Very intense, yes, very intense. It's, you know, you're never really sleeping out of uniform. If you're in your uniform, you're sleeping, and SAR alarm could go off at 3 a.m. and you're just hustle and go, and out there with the red and blue lights on the water. It was actually quite an amazing feeling, like an adrenaline rush, like inside, and it was very busy and active in there.
Cool.
Yeah.
We talked about during the break as well that camaraderie that you feel in that kind of a scenario with the adrenaline. I wonder what that was like for you transitioning out of the military.
You definitely have that in the military. That's what I miss probably the most with it, is that there's like an unknown family that just you're instantly bonded with people that you're staying with for long periods of time. And coming out was a little bit difficult out of the military when I first got out. I think that it's really important to stay active, like go to a local VA system. Whether you need it or not, it's always good to get involved and do things and, you know, get your name out there and stay connected.
And you said the vet center was also a really good, you know, kind of place to land as well.
Yeah, the vet center I went to, it became my second family actually when I got out of the service, and I think that kind of prevented me from probably leaning into more of a substance abuse issues, is that constant communication with someone. And I'll never forget that first counselor that I had, and he helped me and guided me through so many different levels of you know, how to survive out, you know, once you get out of the military, because a lot of people don't realize while you're in, you have everything kind of structured, and there's things going on, and housing is taken care of, and so many different things. So when you first get out, you're like, wow, I'm lost. What do I do?
Let's go to a caller now. I want to pick up a call that came in expressly for you. Lena Martinez is on hold. Can we take the call?
Hi, yes, this is Lena.
Hi, Lena.
Hi, Lena.
Hi, how you doing this evening?
Great, go ahead. What's your question or comment?
I had a question for Jen. I wanted to ask her what is some good advice, or her advice for people that are just getting out of the military.
So yeah, like what we were just talking about, I think that getting involved and getting registered at the local VA would be the first step. Definitely a vet center. Vet centers have so many resources, some that I didn't even know about for years, because they're always changing. The resources are changing yearly. And I'm also involved with Voc Rehab, which is down in Oakland, and that's helping me go back to school. And without their assistance, you know, it would be quite difficult. So it's definitely, I would recommend going into your vet centers and just getting registered, and you know, putting yourself out there and seeing what options that you have.
So getting the support is good, and there's also a piece of you that I was picking up on during the break about sort of never quitting, like just being really determined about finding your path. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, well, yeah, like as I mentioned before, kind of heading back to school is, I'm a little bit older, so it's a little bit difficult. It's a challenge. You know, well, there's the youngsters, and then you kind of feel a little bit out of place, but I just pushed myself through it. And you know, I just decided to go back to culinary school, and there could be some challenges there, you know, with you know, just with the, you know, the whole kind of military thing of being yelled at in school, and it kind of brings me back to situations I may have experienced prior, which is, that's another thing, is, you know, being a disabled veteran and coming back. You know, my disability isn't visual, so it makes it difficult. So you have to have the courage, and you have to stay forward, and just again, reach out. You know, reach out and share your experience with someone. And there's always been someone that's come along and helped me through these experiences and stuff. So yeah, I got to stay strong in that situation too.
Is Lena still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Did you have any other questions for Jen while we've got you here?
Sounds good to me. I just kind of wanted to know what steps were good, you know, once you get out, like what would be good. But I think my question is answered, that she just sounds very inspirational, and it sounds fantastic.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to share while you have some time here to share your experience?
Let's see. It's like, where do you start, right?
Right, it's a big question.
Yeah. I think just staying strong and focused, and I know that, you know, everyone has a different experience with things, and I know I'm still struggling, and probably will always struggle, because I'm human, and just to take, you know, go out there and be open, and you know, not to be embarrassed or, you know, feel humiliated if you're going to reach out for help. You know, that there's always someone out there. You guys were mentioning, actually, like, you know, substance abuses and stuff, and sugar could be a big one for people. I've experienced that myself with sugar, and you know, reached out for help with that too.
There are so many things, right, that could become addictive. You know, we were chatting at the break about how relationships can become addictive to people, and there are lots of things that can, you know, kind of be a challenge. And I so appreciate the strength you're modeling. I think there's a real strength in being open and vulnerable, and walking point this way. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other thoughts?
I'm just trying to think. Like maybe an experience or...
An experience of really seeing your own strength in the process of your coming out of the military and going back to school?
Yeah, I think that's like right now my current struggle and my biggest struggle is just to stay positive and focused. There's some hurdles that I'm experiencing there that you know, my counselor you know, at the VA center was, oh, how are you going to handle like going back to that environment in school? And I'm thinking, it's passion-based, it's culinary school, I'm going to be cooking, this is my realm, you know, my own.
Yeah.
And I've realized it's not, you know, when someone's yelling at you and you're peeling potatoes and they're yelling, you're all over the
like
place.
Boot camp, maybe.
Right, yes.
Right again.
Very similar to boot camp. And yeah, so I just have to like, you know, face up to that and try to get through it.
Okay.
And yeah, I think
Thank you,
that's
Jen.
the best.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, there are many resources and organizations dedicated to veterans and substance abuse. Here are just a few that we thought might be helpful. There are also going to be resources listed on our website. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs has a website dedicated to mental health issues and dependency. Go to www.mentalhealth.va.gov/substance abuse. RealWarriors.net offers a comprehensive list of resources for addicted veterans and their families. To find a Narcotics Anonymous meeting in your area, go to ContraCostaNA.org or call 925-685-4357. To find an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in your area, go to ContraCostaAA.org or call 925-939-4155.
We have some upcoming veterans events in our community. More information can be found on our website. If you have an upcoming veteran event that you'd like us to mention, email or call us with the details. The Military Hiring Fair career event will be held on November 7th at the Oracle Arena in Oakland. To register, go to hiringourheroes.org. On November 8th, the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors will host their annual Veterans Day recognition at 651 Pine Street in Martinez. Everyone will be there. You're welcome. This is a free and open event to the public. The 4th annual Veterans Day softball tournament. Who doesn't want to play softball on Veterans Day? It'll be held on November 11th. Call Maurice Delmer at 925-680-4526 to participate. Jen will be there, right, Jen? Yes, sir. The United Veterans Council and the City of Pittsburgh will hold its annual Veterans Day ceremony on November 11th at the Senior Center, 300 Presidio Lane in Pittsburgh. Call or email Wilfred Scott for more information. Honoring Our Veterans is a 3-day pop-up museum featuring memorabilia and other cultural displays. This exhibit will open on November 11th and admission is free. You won't want to miss this event at the Danville Veterans Memorial Building. For more information, visit vmbsrv.org. Tonight, we have the honor of displaying a shadow box from Ryan Berg. He's our production coordinator on our show. If you'd like the shadow box to appear on the show, email or call our producers and we'll feature your memorabilia. And I want to remind our viewers to please start thinking about your questions and discussion topics for our expert panel in November. This will be an open forum for you to ask your VA benefit questions to our panel of benefit experts. Thank you to all our guests tonight. Thank you, Shauna, so much for being my co-host. Great job. And if you'd like to rewatch and check back on our website for the replay later this week. Tonight, we're without a vital production crew member who is just deployed to Afghanistan. Millie, we miss you, and you are in our thoughts tonight. This is Veterans Voices of Contra Costa, wishing you all a good evening, and thank you for serving.